Good. Okay. This is Senate Appropriations, and we are way behind on our schedule for today. But we're continuing our work on the 25 budget, and so we have the Agency of Agriculture here to present their budget request. And let me state the obvious that this committee just really wants to hear the highlights. I'm sure the other body would like to know. You have $219 change. I'm sure they'd like to spend a lot of time on 219, but we don't. So for the time that we have, would really appreciate your giving us kind of the highlights of the budget, sort of what the agency sees as the challenge ahead. If you have any initiatives that are there, or just initiatives that you're taking just as part of, the work of the agency, I'll leave that up to you.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I have a couple of my colleagues online. Our operations director, Nicole Dios, and also financial director, Amy Messer, online with us, and I'm joined by Andy Miller, who's the director of the Ag Dev division. So, well, thank you for the opportunity to propose look at our budget. Just a few updates, high-level updates. So, where we are, we're extremely grateful for the investments that you made last year in the food and farm economy. We have deployed, millions of dollars over the last year, and it's gone to flood recovery, dairy farmers and processors, small businesses. We've been working to manage. More is on the way over the next few months. We'll be getting more out to our maple producers, fruit and vegetable farmers. We've got some folks that are diversifying their operations, dairy farmers who want to improve their operations on the farm, and also a commitment for our local meat industry. So some more dollars will be headed that way as well.
Are these initiatives, or are they just really priorities within?
They're follow-up initiatives that you funded last year, which will lead us into sort of a different scenario this year.
All right.
So what is in this year's proposed spending plan?
Well, I can see right here.
We have revenues that have slowed. No, it's not news to you, but federal money is drying up, and we have enormous state issues that need attention, from housing to public safety to flood recovery. All these investments are not in our direct budget, but if we make some progress in those areas, it will help agriculture and our rural economy. A few highlights, we're not asking for any new employees. We're grateful for the 3 positions that you added last year. We added 2 meat inspectors and 1 in weights measures. And this year, we are not asking for any one-time money. One-time money is scarce this year, much of it earmarked for critical issues around housing and flood recovery. And our proposal focuses on finishing what we have started, staying focused on our mission. So I can give you a high-level update of some of the things. Again, highlighting our mission. Always important to remind us that we're there to facilitate, support, and encourage the growth and viability of ag while protecting the working landscape, human health, animal health, plant health, consumers, and the environment. So day-to-day life, that's our world. If we go through the 6 appropriations, we have 6 of them: administration, food safety and consumer protection, ag dev, public health and ag resource management, we call it farm. We have the lab, Vermont Agriculture Environmental Laboratory in Randolph, and water quality, rounding out 6 appropriations. Our total budget, 55.462009. If you break down the funds, general funds 22%, special funds at 37%, and federal funds at 38%. And just an asterisk on federal funds, we have considerable USDA grants, mainly the Dairy Innovation Center, that pushes that federal fund up quite a bit that we manage. A couple of things that are new in this year's budget that were because the legislation that was passed last year for some new costs. One is the Vermont Family Medical Leave Insurance Premium.
I think that's something your governor's doing.
Yeah.
We didn't require it.
Well, when I say all
The
this.
royal we.
And then, the second one is,
Which we will, we will take responsibility for that.
the 37 childcare contribution, okay. Good, got one, you got it.
We want to support working parents.
Some decreases, we have a couple, really doesn't affect, it's the Dairy Business Innovation Center. Some of the third-party services and contracts are decreased on that, those are federal funds. And the 2+2 scholarship program, as you know, there's a lot going on with the state college system. This is the 2 years under the old,
Are you moving the slides? Or who's doing, because you're ahead of your slides. You're on this page here and you're still. So
There we go.
it is.
So we're on the
You
areas
are
of
the-
decrease.
No, it's
I can go by this.
no, it's fine.
So the 2+2 scholarship program,
Oh, no, we reduced the, grants. Yeah. Is
uh,
that the money we put in last year?
Is that the one time of the base?
these, which one?
Natural resources.
Research.
And RCS.
Yes, this is the, we increased the base, last year. So we're bringing it back to 500,000. We also have about
They only want 2 million or something more, you know?
we, and we also have, about $5 million that we have in contracts with them. This is just the base budget I'm referring to, but we have about $5 million.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
That's their request.
Okay. So,
We have lots of requests, needless to say.
so this reduction brings their base down to $500,000. You increased it considerably, I think last year you brought it up to 612, brought it up to 612.
So you basically took our increase, and went back to the prior levels.
No, they were down into the one figures. I don't know what Amy, maybe it was like 119 or something was their base
Last year before we increased it.
before. So you brought it up to like 619. And then one, so we just bring it down 100,000, 112,000. Bring it up to 500,000.
In the 2+2, we did have 400 and some thousand in there, so are you using 200 of those thousand for something else?
No, I think we parked some of it, right, Amy?
For the record, this is Amy Mercer, Financial Director for the Agency of Agriculture. You are correct, Anson, the $217,222 for the 2+2 program. Because they're restructuring the program and no one is currently enrolled, our plan is to use this year's funding, FY24's funding, as carry forward for next year. So we're reducing FY25's ask because there essentially isn't a developed program at this point.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So you're just not asking for
Right, I'm
that.
just not asking for.
Correct. And for the record, for the 112,000 to the conservation districts, the 112,000 was the base budget for many years. And then over the past 2 sessions, I believe that it increased by 250,000 2 years ago and another 250,000 last year. So essentially what we were doing was reducing the original 112,000 that they sat at for many years, bringing it down to a level of 500,000 for a base budget.
I think we can move on to some of the budget items, and these are all level funded except for the Conservation Council. The fair stipend, 110,000, farm to plate, farm to school, local food grants, and working lands. Working lands, we did increase the base last year. We're going to we're proposing keeping it at 1 million, and we have put one-time dollars into working land over the last 2 sessions, but this time you're not asking me.
So just remind me, was last year working lands, the total was 1.5
It was,
Yes, for the one time.
yeah,
with the one time.
but the base came up. It was to a million, it was like 300, I think there's 300, maybe 400,000. So we got the base up to a million. So we're asking to 80 base this year.
Yes, thanks, Star.
Yeah. I see you got the fair stipend. Yes, 235. But the issue that I wanna bring up.
It's at 110.
110,
It's a fair.
Farm to plate is,
Farm to plate is.
Is the 3 acre rule for the fairs. The fairs are included in that. And I mean, some of the low fairs is, according to their testimony, it's gonna put them basically out of business. And I was wondering, seeing that deals with water runoff, is there any, do you folks have any clean water fund money that if we can't change the law to help them, do you have any money in the clean water fund that might be able to use?
only that whatever the Clean Water Council recommends, I would think, because we transferred some in the BAA.
Yeah, we get a
For
lot
a
of,
different purpose.
we don't have a lot of discretionary clean water funds. And I don't know the answer to that, so I can go back and check to see what discretionary dollars we have. This is an Agency of Natural Resources program issue, and I've heard about it from Addison County, I believe, is one that's concerned.
Oh, it isn't, it's all of them, really.
So,
And
and there may be, I don't know, there may be some grants available through ANR that could address some of the issues, I'm not sure. But it'd be a better question post ANR, because I'm not familiar with the details of the three, but I have heard the issues from the fairs that they're really concerned about this payment.
well, some of them are over $1 million. And as far as I know, all their water stays home, but they still gotta, jump through the hoops of designs and the amount. And I thought I read someplace where you folks had 7-8 million.
That was what got transferred, but it was for a very specific purpose from the Clean Water Fund to ag. And maybe you can refresh our memories what that was for.
I mean, we've got some ARPA dollars that are tied up in this. We've got the Clean Water Fund, which, they present a budget to vote on and so forth. So I just don't know the answer whether we can move some of those dollars around. I can research that issue and figure out if we have flexibility or maybe.
What's your request for an exemption? Is somebody asking for that?
I believe they,
Fairs are.
I believe the fairs have
Yeah,
asked,
that's what I'm saying.
they've asked for an exemption because of the meeting the requirements of the 3 acre rule. They think it may cost them a considerable amount.
Some of them, like Essex, that's full-time, almost like a full-time
That's
business.
quite different than Lindenville. That's only, 3 days plus
Yeah,
two.
I mean, the little fairs I'm talking about under a certain amount of money.
Well, have you talked to Senator Gray
No.
on that? All right, well, I guess that's on our list. I guess the secretary is saying that's not in his wheelhouse to use that term.
But I will research the discretionary.
It's water quality.
No, but in
You don't
terms
want
of.
PFAS.
rural-
Yeah, no,
They don't want PFAS.
Okay,
And your feedback.
well, let's keep going on this and then.
would you like to go through the crosswalks?
It's.
We can go to that slide if you want on the crosswalks.
Well, all that is doing is walking through how we got to the bottom line appropriation, unless there's something
I mean,
really
it's pretty,
unusual.
it's pretty,
It seems like you've done that by the highlights that you
Yeah.
talked about, unless.
no, unless you want some deep dive in some of these programs, happy to go through those, but that's our budget. There's no new positions, no one-time asks, and we're trying to maintain at best the base budgets in our programs with trimming a few because of, the cost of doing business essentially.
And the lab, that's all up and
The
operating.
lab is going well. We have a new lab director, Cheryl Achilles. Cheryl, comes with a great knowledge. She was with the Department of Health for a number of years. She was right in the thick of it with COVID, and she's taken on a new challenge now, and she's a great addition to our team. So, yeah, we're doing a lot at the lab. It supports every division in the agency of ag, and so many farmers and water quality and all kinds of different issues.
Senator Starr, you had another question. Are you taking testimony in ag as well on the budget?
And as far as the lab goes, we understand that the cannabis board is talking about utilizing some of that.
Yeah.
But it has to be segregated because of the federal requirement.
But with that, will that help? I mean, there must be going to pay rent space for it. Is that gonna help the cost or?
I think if we had a new tenant, it would help our costs. And I know that we were discussing,
Is that BGS cost allocated though?
it is.
So if cannabis moves in, then they will just apportion cost across the different users.
Yeah, so our costs may go down, that's all we get.
Yeah, right, and then they'll be picked up on the, which in some ways is good because cannabis is a special fund and generates its own revenues and you're not, I mean, you're general fund.
And we're in discussion, buildings and general services is kind of the lead because they manage that
Yeah.
part. So but we've been involved in discussions and Cheryl's been involved in discussions. So we don't know where it's gonna land, but people are working behind the scenes to see if it can work. There's, issues about ventilation, security and all that, but people are talking about it.
Can I ask questions?
Go ahead.
On the 2+2, just, the lack of programming at BSU, can you explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, there's they're reinventing, their agriculture program. The herd of cows was sold years ago. And so they have, there's a plan, they have a executive director that's working on reinventing what agriculture programming may look like down there. I mean, they've got infrastructure, do we do more schooling, for example, meat cutting, et cetera, like that? Is it diversified agriculture? There's more work in plants, is there more work in food systems? So they're working on that. I've met with the new president a couple of times. And we're just kind of waiting for a plan to be presented to the college system and also, we try to be a partner if we could.
Okay. Are there any kids who are being left out in the cold because of this?
I'm not sure, but from what the college system tells me, that they don't have enough students in the program to justify some of the expenses under the old program.
But people are in the halfway through and you're pulling the plug, I think.
No. No,
Did have a question. One area that is, being proposed in the governor's budget has to do with, having an additional game warden for, animal cruelty investigations. Sometimes obviously, there's a nexus with agricultural settings, could be horses, it could be cattle, it could be, sheep sometimes, whatever. Is there any nexus between, the resources you have and, your veterinary, I don't know how many, you have one veterinary, in terms of the work that they're taking on, at least till things get sort of developed more?
yes, we provide, I guess you could call it technical assistance. So say a call is made to, Vermont State Police, it's referred to the game wardens, and you've got a hypothetical case of we're investigating the use of, say, horses. So they would call our animal health division in to come and be like, hey, come, and maybe the state veterinarian would go along, the assistant state veterinarian would go along and examine the animals. So they would provide the technical assistance for this. We do not have the authority, to, prosecute or press charges. That would still lie within, the Fish and Wildlife and the wardens. So that's the role, but there is a nexus, we do play it. And we're often called to come out, there's a case that needs some expertise in examining the animal.
Yes, and
You know, the problem is everybody's responsible, nobody's responsible. And that's hopefully, turning it over to Fish and Wildlife will make it easier for people who have complaints. You know, I've got constituents who have constant complaints about people who think they have a farm, but they really don't have a farm. They're just got animals, and their animals aren't being treated well. But whose responsibility is the state police don't want to come? So as long.
if there's a complaint about it now, I think, we have heard from the commissioner that.
That's gonna change, which is what's needed, I think.
And that's why they're asking for an extra position in Fish and Wildlife to do that. And,
Because they have the law enforcement authority.
right, and quite frankly, there's a lot of cases coming up, and it's finally, we got somebody that is at the center.
Most of those people involve domestic animals that are, being eyed out. But there's also sheep and cows.
And then there are debates between people who think it is abuse, and then, the state officials have gone out and said, no, it doesn't rise, but that always hits the press as well.
No, I think the process currently is that, Fish and Wildlife wardens are the ones that have the authority to do the investigation. And then we come along and help. And,
Sort of like an expert.
yeah, we're the expert,
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, because, not every skinny horse is being misused, and that's just a skinny horse, but we go out and investigate those with that technical assistance.
Other questions about your budget's pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward.
Sure, the ag committee will
happy-
be taking more.
Happy to talk about more issues, but that's what we got.
Any questions, committee?
Great seeing you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty.
We'll meet with you later.
Heather, I won't be here Friday,
At all,
At
that
all.
you're letting out.
but I will, because you've got Department of Public Safety schedule. I will try to do Zoom,
What are you doing for?
hopefully 3:30 Saturday morning.
Oh. Okay. Fine. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Have a good one.
Well, I got a 6 a.m. flight from
Thank you.
Albany.
Oh,
I need to get there by
Right.
30.
Hi,
But
Eric.
if you would save all the documents for me
Yeah,
that they hand out,
no, we will.
don't let the senator
I will.
take it.
So we have, NCSL, Erica's here, I see, and, we're happy that, she's making a visit to Vermont, and
I'm gonna turn the light on.
I think it'd be a great idea.
We don't conserve that much anyway.
So, I'm not one for remembering titles, but according to her, you're a senior policy specialist at NCSL. Do you have junior policy too?
I'm actually a program principal, but I think our titles are one of those that like you can't really tell what people do, right? So
I don't know, it's sort of like Erica's here. Welcome to Vermont. We don't have much snow. You're flying in from Colorado,
yes,
you know,
we don't have a lot of snow in Denver either, although it was snowing when I left. So
so maybe we could go around and introduce ourselves again. So, you want to start, Bobby?
Yeah, Senator Starr from Orleans County.
Jenny Lyons from Chittenden Southeast.
Dick Sears,
I think she knows who I am.
I'm Dick Sears. I represent southwestern
The
Vermont,
Forgotten Kingdom.
the Forgotten Kingdom, and I also chair the Senate Judiciary.
I should have said I chair health affairs.
And Senator Starr chairs Ag, and Andy.
I'm sort of chair of transportation. I'm Andrew Perchlick. I represent Washington District, which is the district we're in right now. And originally from Colorado.
you're originally from Colorado? What part?
Handy chairs, transportation.
Internship, what was my?
I don't know,
Vice-
acting.
acting vice-
He's also
senior
vice chair of this committee. And the Greeley water line went right next to my son's house in Fort Collins.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was
yeah,
quite
Greeley was
impressed by
ahead of
that.
its time, getting water from the western slope.
Yeah, I guess. Well, you get it while you can.
Horace?
Huh?
Horace, really?
No, Greeley,
It
Colorado.
was
Oh.
named after
Horace.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
But not by horse, but by
And,
this.
Water is a precious commodity. As they say out west, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And it's gonna become more so, I
And
think.
we have too much of it.
Well, we have, right,
We're gonna sell it.
Yeah,
we're gonna ship it right across.
so what is happening in the world of NCSL, obviously, this is, we deal with money all the time, of which there's not enough. Can you maybe tell us what you're seeing around the country? I guess we're probably not alone. We have everybody who's got huge expectations of what they need and would like and, well, doesn't match very well with what we have for revenues now. So I don't think we're alone in this.
No, absolutely not. I think you're exactly right. As you know, Senator Gidley staff, the National Association of Legislative Fiscal Offices. And we survey them a couple of times a year to kind of keep tabs on how revenues.
And you just remember Amy.
Yes, yes, we saw each other earlier this morning too, but nice to see you guys. And I think we're finding exactly.
And this
what you're
is
saying.
Hannah. In case you all want to know, as she
Should definitely
cried.
be on
to give
schedule.
something.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that states are seeing that revenue slowdown that they've been expecting for quite some time. I think most states have sort of adjusted a little bit for it, so they're still expecting to like meet revenue estimates by the end of the fiscal year. But they definitely like ratcheted those revenue estimates downward from the like really high revenue estimates that we saw the last couple of years. A handful of states like Idaho, I think are still expecting kind of some of those surplus numbers, but by and large, most states are expecting kind of revenue growth that we saw before the end of the pandemic and the influx of federal aid. And I think a lot of states are struggling to manage kind of that new revenue reality of that lower revenue growth without those surpluses and without that federal aid to kind of bolster those budgets. So I think Vermont is certainly not alone in that.
other states in sin, you know, cannabis,
Oh, Senator Sears in
Gambling.
charge of sin.
I'm in charge of
Yeah,
sin in the
sin
committee
taxes.
here.
Okay,
But I'm interested in the uptick we saw was way higher than anticipated. Our gambling program started online like January 9th. And it's come in way above expectations. Of course, we had the Super Bowl, but it's also our cannabis. Even though our program is somewhat uncompetitive with other states, we're still seeing growth there as well. Are you seeing that in other states, on both of those?
And Colorado was an early adopter.
Colorado, I think, was
As
the
we well
first
know.
on the, I hate the term recreation.
Rocky Mountain High,
Retail,
huh?
But on gambling, I know that, a number of states, entered into, and will we see a drop off, or are we gonna see a huge uptick with March Madness?
yeah, on the cannabis side, I don't personally handle cannabis taxes and revenue, so I'm not exactly sure. My sense is that in a lot of states that have had it for a while, it has leveled off a little bit, but I can, I'll double check with some of my colleagues and have them get in touch with you. On the gambling front, we just wrote an issue brief that I think addresses some of this, but I do think that states have seen an uptick in gambling revenue as more states kind of legalize it. And again, of course, the Super Bowl and March Madness.
For whatever reason, the Super Bowl generated more money.
Well, it was new and it was advertised well.
Well, I'm not talking about nationwide, though.
I see. Okay.
That even, our,
Oh, I think it was Taylor
Well,
Swift.
wasn't
I don't
just-
think it was football at all. I think it was
Jason
Taylor.
Kelsey.
well, I guess you could have bet on how long the kiss would last.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that was probably enough.
It was, well, I know that, one of the things they banned was on one of the platforms was how long the national anthem would be.
They banned that?
Yeah, they didn't want to bet on that.
Oh,
I think they've started, this is all from my husband who likes sports gambling, that they started banning things that could be more rigged. Like, you know, the national
Somebody could just
anthem,
sing it.
But I don't
color
know if the
Gatorade,
details
and
would-
things like that.
But it was, you know,
That's not-
it's not just Vermont, it's
it's all over.
Super Bowl, it was all over.
Senators, landlines.
So, no, quick, think about that, then it could be that depressed economic times give people hope by betting that they're gonna get a return. So what
It's
are
like
you,
running a
What
ski area.
depression?
Yeah, I know what depression. We had
Always
depressed
hope.
economic times.
what did I say?
Biden tells me that it's going well.
Oh, we're doing well, okay, but my question is, what are you seeing in terms of the economic outlook, wages and sort of spending power, from your perspective for folks, and because we're hearing that the divide is growing bigger and
Are
bigger.
you talking about household
How
income?
much money people have, household income, right, corporate profits, all that.
I can speak a little bit to that. I'm not an economist. I don't have any kind of official economic positions, but you know, just from some of the sessions that we've had at meetings where we've had economists speak and reading some of the news, I think consumer spending sentiment, I think there's like, I'd say mixed
It's going
information
up,
out there.
yeah.
Like people still seem to be pretty confident, but then I've also seen some polls where that may be waning and people may be starting to like pull back on some of, you know, that pandemic era spending that we saw. I do know that some of the economists we've had have said that more folks at the upper income level have saved the money from, you know, that people got in returns from federal funding and things like that. So some will depend on whether they decide to kind of spend some of that, and that a lot of lower income folks have spent through some of that reserves and a lot of their savings that we've seen.
Yes.
Does ECOS do look at all the forecasts that all these states, I assume every state has economists doing forecasts. And then do you do that kind of work to look at forecasts throughout the states to see trends or if there's any differences or things like that?
Yeah, we do two things. One, in the summer, we asked for more specific information around how much revenue the state is projected to have both overall in the operating budget and then different tax categories. So that we can kind of look back at next year and see where they were, and then we made clear.
Get some from NASDAQ and stuff.
NASBO also has information. Sometimes we struggle to get all 50 states back, and NASBO will typically get those. Their first information tends to be on governor's proposed budgets, and ours is usually what's enacted, so that's kind of the difference. And then usually in December or January, we'll survey to see if revenues are coming in as expected, not necessarily your exact number, but you know, are you expected to meet your estimate? How you revised it downward? And I think what
Look
we
at the forecasts really, exactly.
in
Like look at the next year's forecast for it.
in the summer, we'll ask what the revenue forecast is, what the projected revenue is for fiscal year 2025.
For all states, it's the same fiscal.
No, actually, almost every. There are 4 states that have it.
The fiscal year based on the federal or town.
Michigan and Alabama have states based on a federal calendar. Texas starts September 1st and New York starts April 1st. Or unknown reason.
I guess so. Anything else that we should ask you that you'd like us to know?
No, I mean, I think I know all of you, but I just wanted to introduce myself again and say thank you so much for your support of MCSL. Here for any feedback that you may have of things that we can do differently or things you'd like us to see doing. Any feedback you have is welcome. Also, to let you know that our legislative summit this year will be in Louisville, Kentucky, October 5th through 7th. And then next year we are
When
in
would we have summer?
August 5th through 7th.
Oh, not during the Kentucky Derby.
No, but we will have an event at Churchill Downs.
It sounds a little hot in August in Kentucky.
No.
Well, remember when we had it in Boston and we had Fenway Park?
Yes.
Oh, we had the reception there.
No,
Um,
I was at Oriole Park.
Maybe, but, this was,
I went to New Orleans.
yeah.
We like.
I went
I'll tell you, Baltimore,
Yeah.
Warm,
yeah.
or August,
Yeah,
and, oh yeah, August is particularly.
Denver was one of the best that I went to. They had this thing at the,
Yeah.
did you go to that?
I went to Denver, but I think it was a different
Oh,
organization.
okay, well, this was NCSL years ago in Denver, and they had this big open place, field, you know,
Red
Red
Rocks?
Rocks,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, Red Rocks,
Yeah, that's great.
I went to
Yeah,
Denver.
Mazda was
You
there.
go to
I
Red
went there.
Rocks?
I
Me too, yeah.
also, I've been a couple times in Seattle.
The only time I ever saw Mazda with a clown face. He had a big knot.
Oh.
Well, next year
That was a
is
long time
Boston.
ago.
Yeah, well-
That was-
Oh, next year's
Next
Boston.
year will be Boston, so it'll be our 50th
Boston?
anniversary, so it's just.
Is it always in August?
It is always August, yeah.
Yeah.
It varies a little bit by week, but
And
It's
the,
too easy.
budget and revenue
No,
committee is going to be,
I've never, I've
um,
been there, but I've never.
I wrote it down, June, in June.
the budget working group, yeah, yes, that'll be the first week in June.
And
I
then,
actually got one in Alabama.
Not meetings, yeah.
that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's kind of coast to coast. But,
At CSG Justice Center meeting in Alabama.
oh, I bet they got a good rate.
Well, our chairs now.
I see.
They're also building quite a few new prisons.
Pardon me?
Yes, they said they're building quite a few new prisons too.
Yeah.
So that's talking.
That used to be economic development, prisons and,
Yeah, well, he's-
casinos.
The chair is the head of the floor. I think he said it.
Well, I know you all are chairs of several other committees and have a lot of interest, so please, if you have questions about appropriations or, you know, your other topic areas, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll be sure to put you in touch with the correct people. I'm happy to do any individual research that you may need, you know. during
Well, we just had
events.
testimony from some of your colleagues this morning, transportation.
Oh, great.
So Andy and I were
Joint
there.
with us.
Actually, I would have a question for research regarding prescription drugs and what's going on across the country in terms of regulation and savings. Well, we do know about the boards that are going into place. But what savings are being, realized. And I know Oregon, Maryland, a couple other states, Colorado.
Florida got their Buy for Canada plan.
Yeah, they got it
They're
first.
buying it through
We
business.
passed a bill and then Florida got the right to import. I don't know what that is. That would be fun.
Absolutely. Would you like me to have information sent to you or to Anna or?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Excellent. I have business cards if anybody needs them, but I think you probably know how to touch it. Oh, thank you very much. My in-laws are from Vermont and they're coming to visit this weekend, so they will be excited. That's great. Thank you all very much.
You're heading back tomorrow then?
I'm heading back tomorrow night, so I'll be around.
Where do you want the direct, do they still have that once, just several times a week?
It might be seasonal.
There's not a direct flight to Denver anymore, there used to be.
There was this, a year ago, but it was only on certain days. that-
Really?
Yeah, from Burlington.
Oh, Burlington.
Directly
Yeah, I
to
think they
Denver,
got-
yeah.
They got rid of it, I think.
I think the first time I went to Denver, it flew into
Yes.
Stapleton. Yeah.
Stapleton is a while ago.
I guess it
Oh,
was.
the first time I ever went to.
Thank you, Eric, for dropping in.
Was
Thank you.
Thank you.
in the 1980s.
Thank you.
And let me tell you, the whole front range was open and now it's all developed. All right, Department of Labor, we'll end our day with, Department of Labor and, the Commissioner is,
I hope Commissioner will talk about his IT. again.
Yeah, only if you ask, don't ask.
I won't ask. Don't ask, don't tell.
I've heard that.
You kind of have to ask.
Good afternoon.
So, we will let you go through, obviously, you've got quite a few slides. You getting more general fund than they used to have, but still federal funds are a big piece of your operation, so, do you want to? I don't know which document you want to work from, this one?
We'll start with the one that's.
Okay,
Uh,
because
so,
the ups and downs are just how you
Yeah.
got to the bottom line, and most of those are the standard ones that you get in terms of, um, salary benefits, feeder space, internal service charges and so forth.
so
But we obviously would like to hear about your IT project
Great.
and how that's coming.
happy to talk.
Yeah,
For the record, Michael Harrington, Commissioner of the Department of Labor. To my left is Chad Worsniak, our CFO. Many of you are very familiar with Chad. What you have in front of you are many different slides. It is only slightly updated year over year. So we could certainly go slide by slide, although I think many of you would find this familiar. There are no major changes in terms of the department's organizational framework. It talks about the fact that we have roughly about 260 employees. To what the chair was mentioning earlier, and I'm on, just so folks know, I'm on page 4. We used to be around 82 to 85% federally funded. That changed with the pandemic. And some additional funds that came in to help with IT, to help with staffing. And so what we have seen over time is that, along with some other workforce efforts as well, that our breakdown is now more 62% federally funded versus general fund. We do have, on the right-hand side of the slide, you see our total budget, you see our breakdown of general funds, special fund, federal funds, and interdepartmental transfers. Again, none of that has significantly changed. And then the subsequent pages are really just a breakdown of our divisions. So I can certainly walk through the divisions, but in general, we have unemployment insurance, we have workforce development, we have labor market information, and we have workers' compensation and safety. And those are the 4 traditional divisions that we've had. And this just simply gives you a markup of what those divisions are comprised of. I think probably more specifically to the numbers, you have 2 supplemental sheets that you have with your papers. One is the ups and downs sheet, but this committee has traditionally found value in what we call our spending authority sheets. So it looks like an Excel chart, and it breaks our budget down more by individual funding line. And so it talks more about the programmatic specific dollars. It's the one that has the green column on it. And so you see from left to right, we've numbered the columns. It breaks it down by division or unit. It identifies it as either federal, special, state, or interdepartmental fund. It talks about the specific program that it's for, and then you see FY24 as passed, and then FY25. And the FY25 is general fund is the highlighted column, but we break down FY25 by general fund column, special fund column, federal fund column, and interdepartmental transfer for a total FY25, which is the 3rd column from the right, and the change. I'll point out that the changes you'll see in here predominantly relate to a 3% across the board increase on general fund dollars. So when we got our instructions from finance and management, they said, please keep your increase to a 3% increase. We applied that increase across all general fund programs for the purposes of the fact that salary dollars come out of those.
federal funds, are they federal funds, depending on the nature of the program or the grant, have been fairly stagnant.
Yeah, they either have been level funded or slightly reduced over time, and so that does create pressure. I guess the catch-22 is we've been able to mitigate that with the fact that it's so hard to find staff, that we feel like we're constantly, rotating through, you gain two, you lose one, you gain one, you lose two. So we've been able to mitigate some of that, those challenges in the federal fund with the fact that we are not, paying all of our positions 100% of the time, all the time. Because there are some vacancy savings there. That's not by design. We would fill every position we could if we could, but there's just in the market today, it's a challenge.
You don't have sufficient funding to fill every position, do you?
We would be,
5%, 3%.
with the added increase in some funds that we received over the years, so we received some additional funds for technology, for UI administration. I think we would be close, but I think we would be able to manage it with the funds we have. Again, I think if we were beyond that, typically the one, to be honest, where we always get close seems to be in labor market information, because they are like 99% federally funded, and they always have a razor thin margin because they are traditionally fully staffed. But the Fed money doesn't necessarily keep up with inflationary pressures. And then I would say our Vermont Occupational Safety and Health Administration is always very close, but they've had over the past couple of years, again, rolling occasional vacancies, which have allowed them to work within the budget they have. If we felt like we were going to be, in a position where we had to either keep a position vacant and not staff it, or it was going to require more general fund money, we would have proposed that in our budget, but we didn't feel like that was a risk this time around.
One of your big areas is the federal retain.
Yes. So what you see here is,
Right off here.
yeah, so all you're seeing in this reduction, so if you look at the change column and you see retain at -6 million, because we're talking about spending authority, that just means we've spent 6 million from
Out
the
of the
prior
grant.
year. So it doesn't mean we lost money,
No.
it's just money spent,
My
so.
question, is, the nexus between this grant and vocational rehabilitation or
Okay.
hireability?
Yep.
I assume that there probably is.
There is connection and they play a role. So the retain is a federal award. It was a 1-year award, a phase 1 award that
Was
we
it a
received.
competitive grant?
It
or
was,
what?
and we were one of a handful of states that received both phase 1 and then phase 2. So more states received phase 1, which was $1 million, essentially a pilot. We were one of a handful of states that was also awarded phase 2, which was $21 million. And so it's sub-awarded out, and it's a partnership with Dartmouth Hitchcock Health System, the University of Pittsburgh, another consulting organization, and staff from our office and staff from both rehab or hireability, and then some others as well. And they essentially partner with healthcare providers. They partner with employers, and they partner with injured workers. And the whole idea is how to work with those three organizations, which kind of make up a person's universe in terms of work, to allow that person to go back to work, maybe in a modified job or some type of different employment, but to get them back to work as quickly as possible.
Maybe we should get to UI.
Sure.
Modernization.
So I'll have you go to the last page in your packet here. And it just talks about the fact, and this is just to give you some scope. It's the last page in here. The department actually has 4 modernization projects going on currently, and has for multiple years. So this is not new. They're in different phases. Workers' compensation is the furthest along project. Workforce development is also going through a modernization of their system. The state, as you know, is going through the ERP redevelopment or new project, and our federal accounting system is a portion of that project. So it's the FARS project or federal accounting as part of the ERP project. And then I think the one that everybody's interested in is unemployment insurance. So we received funds from you all in prior years, which has allowed us to go out to bid and solicit.
Was that 30?
Was 30 million. The first, it was, FY 20.
We started at F 22 and then that thing's through.
Yeah.
So we got the first chunk of money came through a BAA, I think, which was about 3.5 million to help shore up the system, redevelop the portal. We're using some of that for our current system to stabilize that and protect that system and provide a little more functionality for users. And then the 30 million came the following year. And so it's been about a year plus that we've gone through. We had to,
Procurement, it says.
yeah, so we've gone out to bid, we put together the RFP, we solicited bids. We ended up with, I think, 7 or 10 bids. And we narrowed it down to the top 3. I think the good news for Vermont is that the top 3 bidders are national vendors, so they are providing workable products, proven products in other states. We identified our preferred bidder and have been going through contract negotiations for about the past year. I'm hopeful that we are about maybe 30 days away from having an executed contract. So my hope and what I've been pushing is that by the end of Q1, we have an executed contract and a soft launch of the project. Just as a point of reference, this is technically an ADS project because it's a technology project. It obviously relates to the department, but they are taking the lead on the contracting piece. From that perspective, once we launch the project, it's about a 24 to 36 month timeline from initial requirements gathering, business applications, and then development and launch of the system.
So one of the things that happens or sometimes doesn't happen, and obviously DMV has been working on their system, and that is the work that has to go in advance.
Yeah.
And then assignment of staff to know the work and have the expertise to really do that full time, and then you have to backfill those positions. Is that what has happened so far?
So
I mean, in terms of all the looking at your system and your, business processes.
So we will have an RFP that we put at. Part of this has been wanting to make sure that we're in lockstep with which vendor we're selecting, making sure we're at a close point for agreement. Because the way we develop our business processes will depend on the vendor and the system we're using. So because we are pretty confident at this point, and this is just based on the update we got yesterday or the day before, we're moving forward with an RFP for we'll call it business transformation. ERP is doing something similar, so they're having a consultant come in over the multi-year to review and develop and inform the redesign of their processes. We'll do the same thing. Then we also have been identifying staff. So there was 3 additional staff that was immediately given to the project. And we filled those. We are looking at adding some additional staff, and that's to backfill. So what happens is when we begin development, depending on what phase of development we're in, we will take staff, subject matter experts from a particular unit or area and move them to the project for, maybe a couple months at a time, so that they can inform the development of that system. And while they're there, we will need to backfill their positions to continue to operate and administer the program.
Yes, so you must be, you're gonna have to keep the old system running for as much as a couple of years more.
Yeah.
Are these modules?
Yeah, so the system itself has gone through some minor upgrades. It's on better technology and better hardware than it has been in the past. It now used to reside at the Department of Labor, now resides in a data center that I don't even know where it is. It's probably somewhere in Massachusetts or Connecticut or something like that. So it's wherever the state has its houses, its data centers. The biggest challenge we've had so far is with this claimant portal and how the claimant portal links with the actual core system. It continues to give us challenges. We've been able to manage those challenges, but I think no one is more eager than our staff to find a better solution, because whenever the system goes haywire, it's our staff that are there that take the brunt of that frustration from the public.
I would just say, it's not just your staff.
Yeah.
Fair.
We get it.
Because I will tell you from my perspective.
Yeah.
It's not as many as during COVID, but I had at least 6 or 7
Yeah.
in the last month and a half.
Yeah,
And they're really not fun.
but you
Yeah, and-
only got a couple more years, so hang in.
We did. We did have,
The world is up,
we did have that,
I've resisted sending stuff to you and.
But we've heard-
you are always
Oh,
trying
I hear
to
it.
send it to myself and to Cameron.
I know, well, we have cameras emailing us, as he well knows, but we've heard people call
Yeah.
and they said, we can't take your call, and then, they call
That's what I was
back.
getting.
I have sent Cameron something in the last week, so.
Is that what you want us to do? Seth?
That, so I'll say, we had this kind of outage and cascading issue that was on the technical side. And that happened in early December, and that kind of threw things
Yeah,
into
I know.
chaos for about 2 months. But I can tell you, so there are some people who've said, I can't get through. What we see is, at this point, our wait times are, except if you call on Monday, which seems to be our busiest day, our wait times are under 45 minutes. Some days they're under 25 minutes. So again, we're at this point, if people are saying they can't get through, again, I might challenge that and say, like, are you actually calling and staying on the line? Again, if there is truly you're not able to get through and you've tried multiple times, we are happy to help. But I think there were some people that tried back in December or January, they gave up. And they haven't tried again. So I would encourage those folks, try again, because we're in a much better position than we are right now. But if you truly have somebody who continues to try or cannot get through or has some other challenging issue that they're dealing with, I think emailing myself or emailing Cameron is the best way.
And under vacancy rate at 70%, you're in a race with corrections.
Yeah.
Like that.
We had a conversation about this the other day in House Commerce. We run about 17%.
Is that normal? Like, is that, like, if you went back
It's
6
no,
years?
it's not normal pre-pandemic. It's normal pandemic and after. It's for a couple of different reasons. It's mainly in workforce development and it's mainly in unemployment insurance. The biggest number one issue we hear is people looking for hybrid or telework options. And the limits of our UI system prevent hybrid work. So most of that work has to be done in person, and it's challenging work. I mean, especially the folks, and I give a lot of credit to those that are on the phone lines all day long, taking 20, 30, 40 calls of just one person after another. There is so much more functionality and self-service that will come with the new system. And so much of our systems that even used to be automated or at least tied together was disconnected as part of the pandemic to manage the number of claims. We haven't been able to reconnect. And so the challenge there is we've actually created more manual processes because of the pandemic rather than fewer. That will certainly change when we modernize. In workforce development, the challenge we have is, and this may be a philosophical difference, but most of our staff work in the field. They work with community organizations. They work with individuals who are hard to employ or have significant barriers to employment. And it's my belief, and I think the belief of others, that they really need to be in our career resource centers. They need to be engaging with the public. They need to be on site at a local library or working with another community member. I don't think we provide the best service possible for the needs of our communities if our staff are remote and only able to provide virtual services. I think that's a component, and we're trying to figure out how to build that in. Because I would love nothing more than somebody to be able to, log on from their home computer and obtain services from the department. But right now we are also, part of our role and charge is to maintain physical locations. And we have probably more physical locations than we should for a state our size. But some of those locations are staffed by only 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And so if you end up with a portion of those people, being out or out in the community, it becomes harder and harder to keep
So
those
is UI
offices.
totally centralized now?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
It used to be.
But, we do talk about the fact that, when we have maybe a more modern system, and some flexibility, whether there is value, especially in I'll call them our hub offices, our larger offices in the field. They're called job centers, so they're part of the American Job Center Network. And we've talked about having a UI, professional in our job centers to provide service.
How has technology changed? I mean, the old labor market exchange, that was part of the original
Yes.
mission of the department, and now with Indeed and other services like that, which can be pretty expensive. Are they dealing with a different applicant market and employment? Because I know that certainly many of the populations that you're serving, or you've got a grant for, or specific funding, are targeted towards special populations that have challenges. So I was just wondering how the world of technology might have
Yeah.
changed that whole labor market exchange function.
So we still have, it's called Vermont Job Link. We are required under the Federal Innovation and Opportunity Act to maintain a state job board. So it is where employers can post job openings, where job seekers can post resumes, and where they can link up. That's as much of a service for the job seeker as it is for the employer to find talent. And that doesn't preclude them from going on Indeed or, Monster or some other application. Ours is somewhat unique. I mean, I think most people who are active in the job search market, they're familiar with it, they've gone through it numerous times, it's not intimidating to them, can navigate Monster Indeed just fine and have no problem linking up with an employer and finding their next career. I think we tend to serve those folks who may be more intimidated by going on a job board, don't know where to start, want to advance their skills. So they might want to enroll in a training program of some kind to earn a certification or a license in a particular field or occupation. But the unique thing about our job board is that there's actually 3 components. So imagine it similar to kind of like an iceberg. There's the part above water that you see, and that's the part that the public sees, which is the job board. But underneath the water, it also serves as our case management system. So it's how our staff in the field enroll people in various WIOA programs, how they case manage those folks, how they take notes and triage whatever challenges they're facing. And then it also serves as our federal reporting system. So the information that gets put into the system gets aggregated and comes out the other end for our regular quarterly and annual federal reporting. So it is more than just a job board, and we are actually going through the process of modernizing that system as well, because there are limitations with the current Vermont Job Link. It's not always user friendly. It's a little bit cumbersome. It doesn't have all the functionality. I think we'd love to be able to put training opportunities on our job board. We'd love to be able to put internships and apprenticeships and other things on our job board that our current system doesn't always allow for. So technology has changed, but I think for the most part, that core system has remained the same, but how people interact with it and use it, the ability to use it from a phone or from home has really changed over the years.
Well, certainly the federal funding has changed.
Yes.
as well, because years ago, funding was fairly generous.
Yeah.
To support the Department of Labor.
So the federal funding typically is also tied to unemployment rate or utilization of services. So you can imagine in a time where the unemployment rate is exceptionally low and there are fewer people looking for work, there's less utilization of services, and that is typically what drives federal funding. So more utilization of services demands more funding, and every state is challenged with that.
how's our rate running?
High twos, I think.
Yeah, under 3%.
Yeah, so
Right,
we're,
we're usually neck and neck with New Hampshire,
yeah, so,
but frankly, we're a region. and
this month we won't have, last month we had December, this month we won't have any, because we do a true up of our annual data. And then we'll present both, a re-look at, the 2024 or 2023 data and also, February's data. Those both come out in March.
Other questions or comments?
To the vacancy rate that was brought up, we've got a couple of different unique things we're looking at to try to attract more staff, trying to balance both whatever the challenges bring, but also why would folks want to come to the Department of Labor? And we were just having some conversations today and over the past few weeks about what we are already doing, how we can enhance that. Again, the biggest challenges are the demands on the work, the limitation of how the work can be performed. We have some divisions that are able to maintain staff and they see very little turnover. That's usually folks that come with some type of professional degree or license, and then or they have more flexibility in their role. It's not always tied to pay. That's obviously a good indicator for folks, and I think something that people are keenly aware of, but it's not always tied to which one pays more. But I think what we see is if I can work in state government somewhere else, get paid the same amount of money, but have the flexibility to work from home, that may be a more desired position for me.
But why hasn't state employment for the other areas brought their people back to the office?
Here,
We got the space, we pay the space, we heat it, the lights, I mean, I don't understand, because that makes it hard for agencies that need the people showing up every day. The sister agency or, you know, from home.
I think that the biggest challenge is, we're in a competition, a race, right, for talent, and probably more so than we have ever seen before in terms of attracting people to state government. The biggest attractors to state government were usually pay, job security, and benefits, including retirement. And those are not necessarily the top drivers anymore for why people choose to work for the state of Vermont. So, or any state, I should use government as a whole. So I think when we're trying to compete against the private market, then we end up looking to things like, what are the things that a private employer can provide? Flexibility in where you work or how you work. Not every department can do that. The Department of Labor can't do that. I don't have a problem with, hybrid work, being able to work maybe a day or two or something from home. But it's a lot different than being full-time. And again, our systems right now just don't allow for it, and the services provide.
Other comments or questions?
But you're not relying on those vacancy statements to.
We're not relying on
in your
them.
budget.
No, I mean, we're not holding anything back. Again, I think we just were able to project based on where we are right now and this year that we won't run into a challenge. But I think as we get into developing the following year's budget, if we are able to meet the needs and fill the positions we have, then we have to have.
What would you consider a normal vacancy rate? Right, what do you shoot for? Like
Yeah, that's a great.
5% of normal.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'd love to go back and actually look at what it was, in 2018.
Yeah, if you find that out on that.
We could probably find that out. I just
And
have,
some of those jobs are really.
Yeah.
Pressure.
they're pressure. I mean,
When
we
you're on
are,
the phone
Yeah.
all day and.
we are looking at how they're classified, make sure they're classified in the state system appropriately, that pay is commensurate with other like positions across state government. But we have also, I think, our positions to some degree, our entry level positions have traditionally been paid less than those in other state agencies. But again, a lot of that has been tied less to our desire to want to pay more, be more competitive, and more how reliant we've been. And I'm thinking back over the past 10 to 15 years, how reliant we've been on federal money. And so if the message has been year over year, not to, to do the best you can without dipping into the general fund and rely as much as you can on your federal dollars. That has really driven, that's not our current mentality or practice, and it hasn't been for this administration, but I think looking back, it has really been tied to the limits of the federal dollar.
Thank you. All right, unless there are other questions. UI fund is good and healthy, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're above, 260 million, I think. It's not where it was, but, all indications are that it continues, we kind of look at a 10-year. So we're either looking back 10 years or forward 10 years, in terms of, our projections for the fund. And we are on track compared to what our projections were based on our tax rate and how, things continue to move. For reference, just for folks, we were at about 520 million. We, during the last, before the pandemic. I think some might say that that was maybe too high. Again,
Then adjusting the rates.
the system is just designed to continue to collect money, the interest compounds, so it's earning money too. And so we've talked about, what we can be doing in those circumstances when it reaches a certain level. The other challenge we get into, and this is, a debate we've had at the federal level too, is that states are not allowed to use trust fund dollars for anything other than paying benefits. And we've said, the federal government has tried to fund, including, that. And so we have said to the federal government, if your goal is to incentivize people to have healthy trust funds, right? One of the things you could do is identify what that healthy level is, and funds over that amount are allowed, a portion of those could be used for administering the program. That's one way to do
I
it.
know we struggled with, how you do it with those federal rules, particularly around the.
But they're very stringent, in how they work. During the last large recession in 2008, it was, I think we ended up, about $330 million of expenditures out of the fund. The
That
fund
was
went,
back when we had to adjust the rate.
the fund went upside down. We
Yeah.
ended up borrowing money from the feds. And by the way, some states like to live that razor thin margin. Vermont is not one of those states, thankfully. Because when you get into a borrowing situation, you actually have to pay,
You have to
a
pay.
portion of that back out of general fund.
That's a terrible hit, isn't it, really?
Well, and you're paying interest on it, and portions of that repayment come out of general fund, so.
All right, well. Sounds like. Modernization, hopefully, I hate that term.
Yeah.
Whatever, but hopefully that continues to go smoothly and on track. It's a DOB, it's one system that so many Vermonters experience, and certainly your unemployment, particularly when you're in economic cycles, it's another thing that.
Yeah.
So, okay. And I know that your effort to do a multi-state, that fell flat, which is very difficult to pull off, frankly.
Well, it was back in 16, 17, 18, 19. That was kind of flawed in the design, the way the federal government designed it, and we got to a point where we had used all the federal money, and weren't prepared to begin to kick in state money to a system that was not working.
Well, I think, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And
Feel free to reach out anytime if you have
there
any
are
questions.
the afternoon, and so I'm going to adjourn the committee for this afternoon. Question before we do that, we're going to get to do, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I've got the thing, and I wanted to have a bit of discussion on that. I'm gonna go